This is Charles,
This is Emmanuel.
and you are listening to
Blight makes right.
the original Legion of Everblight podcast.
Ah!
Was that your Velociraptor?
No, that's my excited sound. I think I stole it from Chance the Rapper at one point, and then I was just like, I'm gonna make sounds.
That's reasonable. It was cool at Warfaire Weekend. Every time I was talking to somebody who was a listener, I was like, "Do you just listen or do you watch the show?" And pretty much across the board, everyone I talked to said that they do watch the show, not necessarily every
Interesting.
time or like right away, but they do end up watching the show. And like one example, somebody was telling me that at their job they can't have headphones in and they can't have audio on, but they will play the show. And there's some feature where you can just like have like it's subtitles and it
Huh.
just like tries to translate all of it into text, and that gives him the ability to like watch the show while he's at work when he can't listen. And while the subtitling doesn't end up being perfect, it like he gets the gist of it, and then maybe listens to the episode later on too. So I was like, cool. I'm glad fans are liking it.
Good luck to the algorithm that tries to keep up with the two of us.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But anyway, listeners, we are going to talk about Warfare Weekend, which sadly, man, I feel like everything was like a manual should be there. We got Lucky Friends in Pokemon Go right before Warfare
Yeah, we did.
Weekend. And like so many people were asking about you, and I was just like, sorry, guys. His boss said, I'm on vacation that week. You have to work.
You know, it's a weird time of year for me. I'd like to get it off one year, but I'm gonna get it off the year I qualify. That's all there is to it,
Guess we'll just have to make sure you qualify.
without a doubt. 2020, here we come.
Boom. All right. Well, I mean, I'll admit there was a point when I was like, Emmanuel's not going. Do I really want to go? Like Michael Chili Winners is not going. Like, what's the point? What's the point? But I was like, you know what? I want to get out. I want to get in games. I was like, I'm not qualified, which was super weird because almost everyone I talked to was like, you're already qualified, right? You don't. I'm like, I'm doing the LCQ, and they're like, you're not qualified. What? And even then, I'm like hanging out. Like after the LCQ, everyone's seen the brackets, and I'm hanging out and just like gonna watch like Jake's game and like checking out lists and stuff. And people are like, "Hey man, good luck on your round one." I'm like, I'm not in the LCQ. um, but so that was cool. I was like, I guess I have the reputation that I should be, I suppose.
Go for it.
But okay, well
You
let's talk
should be.
Warfare
You
Weekend,
need
right?
to really get out there.
Yeah, I'm gonna be hitting the tournaments much harder for 2020.
Definitely.
And now I feel like I have enough practice into quite a few different matchups. I'm starting to get a feel for like what I should play, and most of my losses were because of clock, and now I'm feeling like I'm a little bit more prepared for that. But well, where do you want to start? Obviously, you didn't get a go, so you could be kind of the guide for the listeners.
Well, I mean, the first thing I'm curious about whenever you go to any con is how did you prep for it? Because for me, prepping is 90% of the battle.
Well, I will admit that I'm at a point in my life where I'm trying to not submit to my normal obsessive nature, and I'm trying to balance multiple things. And I'm still wanting to like build and craft, and I'm still trying to be more physically active, and I want to compete in War Machine. So I'm trying to balance all those things. So I'm still not as practiced as I would like to be. I did one tournament like the weekend right before, um, but we talked about that on the last episode. But I didn't end up liking either of the lists that I tried. And so what it came down to was it ended up being a conversation that you and I had after the fact, and you were like, "Play what you know." Vale won, Callus won.
Yeah, that's true. And so going into the LCQ, did you have any initial thoughts, meta concerns, anything that you were like, I don't want to see this, I hope I dodge, or like anything you were really excited, like, man, I really want to get this matchup?
Well, I was definitely hoping to get matchups into some of the things that I haven't played into one way or another. Like, I definitely need Grimkin practice for sure. That is such a weird
Mm.
matchup. And I was hoping to get another game in against Crucible Guard. And I just wanted to see more things that I hadn't seen. And so that was one of my number one goals was to help refine my lists to help me prepare for what I should be playing at, say, LVO. But I wanted to learn stuff out of it. That was my primary goal. And so I walked into it. No real expectations one way or another, but I wanted to learn.
Mm, absolutely. So, what did you learn going into the LCQ? You have a lot of games. There's a lot of information to gather, and you're gonna get some great opponents. What'd you get round one?
Well, so I suppose we should probably talk about what lists I actually brought. Um, so
Yeah, for sure.
Um, as so before, like 30 minutes before it start, they wanted to be able to like do, list check and everything. So before the event was even going to start, I had to like obviously pick my lists. And there was a point, and I'm like, I'd written down my Veil 1 list. And I decided to make a change to it for the purpose of the LCQ, because the last time I was in it, even though that was a long time ago, I knew that people go for assassination runs. It's a long event, and
Mm-hmm.
it definitely shifts people's mindset towards they need breaks in some of the rounds. And we play War Machines longer than it was before. So I shifted my Veil 1 list and switched both the min rot wings, or most of the rot wings down to min unit. So I had two packages that could spread out more. And then that 10 points allowed me to stick in a Nephilim Protector. The idea being just give me an additional shield guard for Golab or for Veil, and putting Veil's with guard dogs melee defense up to 17, as well as with concealment her, range defense is 17. And so I thought that would maybe is not the best version of that list, but I thought it would help me in this particular format. So that part I was pretty set on, because you're like, play Veil. I was like, I'm going to play this list. But then I kept going back and forth. I have like 6 or 7 different Callus lists that I'm interested in playing, and I couldn't decide which one was going to accent my list better. And there was a Saren list that I had built, but I decided not to play it because obviously I wanted to lean towards your advice and play what I know, and I thought I could be ended up being really disappointed going into the LCQ if I bring my Saren list, which I have no practice with. I have practice with the models,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have practice with Saren. And if things don't go well, that could leave me really disappointed, because that could just feel like a bad choice, right? Like now I brought a list, I don't really want to play it. Now I'm in this long 7 round event and feeling trapped into one list because I'm not
Even
feeling
a
comfortable
little
enough.
bit of doubt can stop you from playing a pair. When you're sitting there at the table and you're like, man, I know this is a good player, and I know that that's probably a better matchup for me, but I don't
I don't know
know
if I'm going to play it fast
that
enough. I don't know if,
this well
yeah,
enough to
there's just a
play
lot
this
about
player. So
having a list like that where I'm just like, what are you going to do?
it's not the time for sure.
So I decided not to bring the Saren list, but I was having a really hard time picking which version of Callus. And then they were like calling like 5 minute warning to get lists turned in. And so I'm like, I don't know what Callus list I want to play. I don't have as much practice with Absalonia 1, but I have played her, and I knew which Absalonia list I would play if I was choosing to play her. So I just put in Absalonia 1.
It's like audible left.
Well, I was having trouble picking which Callus list I wanted to play. And I also had, I was like, well, I think this is the better list, but I feel like I'm going to be more vulnerable to assassination. And I feel like people are going to go for that sort of shit. And so I was worried that Callus wasn't going to cover some of the things I was worried about, like, say, Sloan or Rasheth. And I was really worried that I was just going to hit one of those. And let's be honest, Jason Watts in the LCQ, and I knew if like I was going to go through it, I would probably have to go through him at some point.
Mm.
And I knew that I would have trouble going through Rasheth with Callus and Veil 1. So
It's funny. You just spent that whole time trying to tell us how sad you would be if you didn't choose Callus, and if things ended up poorly for you, and then you're like, but I chose Abby anyway.
well, I didn't say if I didn't choose Callus. I just meant bringing a list I had absolutely no practice with, which would trap me into whatever my other list was, whether it was Veil or whether it was Callus. I didn't mean not bringing Callus would make me sad.
For
Um,
sure.
because I think while Callus is very good, he's also very long, grindy games, and that can be particularly hard in a 7 round event. So I
This is
decided to
me
bring,
playing that little baby violin for you because
yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
So,
Um, so I decided to play an Absalonia 1 list that was quite a bit of heavies. Um, it was Proteus, Golab, Seraph. Um, fuck, now the exact list is all of a sudden escaping me.
that's
I
okay.
know
You
I
said
posted this
quite a
in.
bit of heavies, and that's a technical term, I'm pretty sure. You
Yeah,
can
I'm pretty
actually
sure that
measure
just
and
like,
weigh quite a bit of heavies. Like when
yeah,
people say,
it's,
"Hey, what's your Legion list?" I usually just say quite a bit of heavies. Which
yeah, so it was a PT list, Golab Seraph, 3 Nerfs, Proteus, double Forsaken, Feral Geist, 2 Spell Martyrs, double Hellmouth, Valkyries.
mm,
And I wanted something that I could potentially like drop into some guns. And I thought playing her in PT, giving me access to the Hellmouths, would help me keep alive in scenarios. Because one of the things that I've been noticing is you kind of have to be ready to play almost any list into any scenario because you hit these weird spots where you're like, well, I want to play into this, but I built this beast heavy list that's a good counter to this. But now we're playing in a scenario where you need units to score. And so I
mm.
kind of wanted to make sure that both lists could kind of manage either way, which is why I like kept the Harrier in the Veil 1 list because I wanted to have that mobile piece that could kind of go to whichever zone was needed. Um, Especially say like the championship belt one, like be able to like position the Harrier so at some point it just walks wide into a zone and has no fury on it, so I don't have to worry about it frenzying to just control the zone when I need it to. Um, so anyway, the funny part was, so I'm sitting at a table and I've been talking with David, who is a listener of the show. He's wearing his BMR shirt,
Nice.
and his buddy Clay is there, and we're talking about his scoring lists and stuff, and we were talking about like the Legion unscoring matchup, and then pairings go out, and what happens? I'm playing against Clay round one.
Mm,
There's like 85 people in this tournament, and I'm playing the one person that I just met. Uh,
awesome.
so, and he's got Rasheth and Zaltu, which immediately I was like, I'm kind of glad I brought a list that I would like. I felt like Absalonia 1, it's not necessarily a great game into Rasheth, but like it's playable. Veil 1 is not good into Rasheth. Her shit will just get obliterated.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And so when I was looking down, I was like, I have a feeling that he's gonna drop Zaltu and not Rasheth. But if I drop Vale into Rasheth, I think I get wrecked. Regardless of skill level, I'm pretty sure Rasheth will just casually shoot Vale's list off the table.
Hmm.
So I'm like, you know what? Even if he drops Zal, I think I can make a game of it with Absalonia 1. He does drop Zal. Um, and in this time, I think I actually won the roll and elected to go first because I wanted to be pressuring him on the table. I wanted to move up really aggressively against a list with one gun. And so I moved up really aggressively on him. And then he was like calculating all of my threat ranges and stuff. And he moved up real passively and didn't get very aggressive. And then again, I move up and I'm like out of his threat ranges, but kind of controlling even more of the board. And he pops feet, but he's not really doing enough to manage the zones. And so I end up going up on scenario, and um, afterwards we talk about it, and I was like, dude, you needed to push hard on your feet. Like that shit just goes into me. Like I'm not playing Animag. You like that Supreme Guardian needs to be in a zone. Like, and he was, I think he was overly respecting my threat. But again, it was a Go Lab is able to make key kills to clear out a zone and like allows me to go up on scenario, which is what Go Lab does. I'm like, nope, don't even worry about that tough check die. Go Lab's over here. Go Lab is saying, I got to clear this zone. So,
Nice.
but anyway, Clay was a super nice guy, and it was fun to like have a game against someone I had just been chatting with, and so we got to talk a lot about the matchup. And so I think a little bit I was helping him, which David's like, "Hey, don't be telling him secrets. Don't be telling him how to beat Legion." Um, so yeah, that was my round one. It was playing into something that I've played before. But I will say that there was one really key moment where going into like turn 2, I was a little sad because I'm like, man, I totally didn't move up Amok, so now those guys can just like move through my tentacles. I think he like got to a Hellmouth early was the one thing that he was able to pull off, and I was like, man, I would have been able to protect that if I just moved up Amok. And so I didn't tell him like you lose incorporeal because it didn't end up mattering. I forgot to activate Amok, so he was too far back. So I ran him the next turn, and he's like, all right, I do my thing to go incorporeal, and I can say, because he vengeanced all of them like towards Absalonia, like not giving a fuck about anything else. I'm like, oh, he's gonna try to kill me. And he's like, all right, I spent a soul for incorporeal. I'm like, I just want to make sure you're aware right now, they are not incorporeal. He's like, wait, what? I'm like, Amok is with 10 inches of them right now. He's like, oh. It wasn't one of those things that like he loses it as they charge. Nope, they were all already in his bubble. He's like, not gonna get to assassinate Absalonia.
Wah, wah, wah.
Amok's pretty important for that matchup. But he did end up killing Amok. He did end up killing Amok, but at that point, like, scenario was a thing.
He has been an MVP so much for me this year into Scorn. I would say just having that on a stick in Primal Terrors, I mean, in particular because I play Animag, but
yeah,
overall, just having that on a stick has made that matchup much more palatable.
For sure. Well, round 2 is where things get a little crazy. So I get Travis, the Infernal Dark Legacy, and he's playing Infernals. And both of them are the Flames of the Darkness lists. And he's got, I think it was Fiora and Sloan. And I'm pretty sure I'm getting Sloan. So I know that I can't play Veil again. And I'm thinking, I am glad I brought Absalonia. Because I'm about to get shot to shit. Now, he has one very key difference in his list versus the Solons that I've been playing against. He does not have the Trencher crews that have like the Grievous Wound Gun, which I was like, I was kind of happy to not see that. I thought that might be good for me, but he brought Orin 2 on Min Cultists instead. This was a very important factor for this game. So this game is not very long. What happens is he moves up. I move up all of my shit. I create a wall of beasts in front of Absalonia, and Absalonia walks into a trench. She has 2 Fury on her, and I have Playing God out. So, what happens from there is he proceeds to pop feet. Orin had like annihilated his own 4 cultists. So he has 4 souls. And the way that this turn goes is that he shoots through my Seraph to get line of sight. So that puts Abby up to 3 transfers. And then shoots through all 3 shield guards. Shoots through all 4 of my transfers, the 3 Fury plus the Playing God transfer, at a defense 19 Absalonia in a trench. And he has a shot to spare, needing 12s.
Jesus.
Orin giving rerolls and reroll damage rolls. He rerolled 3 misses into hits. So right there, Orin accounted for 3 hunter shots. And then the only damage roll he had that was below average, he rerolled into a high roll. So I never had that small damage roll that I could soak up. And he still had a shot to spare at the end of it. And he had Puppet Master for that shot. So like, or I think he may have used one of his he had the Puppet Master objective. I think he had either rerolled a damage roll or rerolled a 2-hit roll. But either way, he had another shot to still finish me off afterwards.
Rerolling guns? Who knew?
It's a thing. We discussed it afterwards, and I didn't realize quite how much Orin was going to tilt the math there. I needed one more thing. I needed to do a couple things differently. I had positioned the shield guards a little bit aggressively to defend heavies, in the sense of I was prepped a little bit more for the long game. I wanted to make the assassination run hard, but I was still thinking about how I'm gonna have enough heavies at the end of this to have a reasonable feat and then start killing him. But I think from the get-go, he wanted the assassination. And so that meant that there was a Minuteman that was able to get a shot on a shield guard that was not really going to be threatening Absalonia. And that allowed him to essentially eat up a gunshot that wouldn't have been able to go into her. And um, and I potentially should have actually shield guarded the shots from Sloane into the Seraph, since both of hers had to be boosted, like, and they were going to be such high damage output. I think I probably should have had those two shield guards up front, just protect the Seraph. But I wanted to give myself options into the turn. So it is what it is. I also should have ran Amik up, since he's not really super relevant in the matchup. Amik should have also been behind the Seraph, basically, to block line of sight to Absalonia and to like just force him to shoot through an additional thing. Because if he had not been able to shoot the shield guard with his Minuteman and he had one other thing to shoot through, then Absalonia lives and he gets wrecked. Because there's just kind of like one transfer on 4 different beasts. Absalonia heals all of it, and then all of his shit dies. So, but again, as I was talking about, I wanted to learn stuff. And so that was an interesting game for sure. And I immediately, whenever I saw Sloane list, I'm like, that person's not playing Orin. That's a mistake.
Yeah, rerolls super important for those guns, and I think that's going to catch on real fast.
Yeah, it's just, and it's something that, like, if you are playing the late game and troops and stuff are coming into your things, Orin can end up with more souls, right? Does Orin only collect from friendly?
You asking me like I play Infernals, man?
Yeah,
I'm a Minoff player where I'm like,
talking.
You care about souls and spells? No, none of that this game, buddy.
Well, do you have any questions about the matchup?
Well, it sounds like it was pretty cut and dry on the advance, his intent, and what you could have done afterwards. I'm curious about the next matchup more than anything and how you proceeded through the day. But I know you're kind of rifling through War Room right now to go get Orin's stats.
I just want to make sure that we're just when a model in the unit is destroyed. So he's not getting any more souls. So he's just it's just 4 souls. So I just wanted to make sure we had the right information for that. But I definitely wanted. I was like, I'm staying in. Like, I'm not dropping. I'm playing through this thing. I didn't even know there was a chance that 3-1s can go in. Round 2, I get a player who used to play in Cutter's meta, and he was playing Grimkin, and he had Child and Old Witch. I haven't played into either one, so I'm like, learning experience either way. Now, I wanted to play Absalonia into him, but it was a scenario with the main zones were unit scoring. And so I was pretty sure he would drop Old Witch, and there's like 4 clock dresses. Again, I wanted to be able to play Absalonia, but I didn't think I would be able to protect the Hellmouths against his Cav unit. And so I was like, let me play Vale. Unfortunately, this was also not a very long game. When he starts coming in with all of the clockatrices, I realize I don't have a good way to, as the shield guard doesn't help Golab survive the paralysis sprays because they're sprays. And so his ability to manipulate, like, basically he shuts down my assassination run on Old Witch because there's no way that Golab is not going to get paralyzed, which means his threat range is significantly shorter, which means I'm not going to threaten Old Witch, so she still gets to go all out. What happens is he's coming in with all of the Boundless Charge clockatrices. I do my normal Dark Sentinel shenanigan and move one out of the way. We did have an interesting moment where we were like, so he is assaulting me, and I'm Dark Sentineling, and both of them trigger at the end of movement. What happens to the assault spray? Does it spray first? Does it spray after the Seraph leaves following the same path? Does it change direction and spray towards the Seraph's new location? I had no idea. So we reviewed it, we grabbed a judge, and thankfully it has a very easy resolution. They both trigger at the same point in time, and so you assault first, basically, is the answer to that. You resolve the assault, then you resolve the Dark Sentinel move.
Yeah, it's active player.
Yeah. So easy enough. But he was like, interesting. So then I think all that Clockatrice got to do is buy some, like, start taking a few attacks into a Chosen, since now the Seraph was out of the way. But now he was looking, and with the Seraph not there, he thought that he could go for an assassination run on Veil, and because there was now, I think he was assuming that, like, I thought the Seraph was going to die there because it's going to get paralyzed and then take multiple charge attacks. I was pretty sure it would probably die. So I'm not sure this hit the Dark Sentinel move changed anything. But now all of a sudden he was like, I think I can Boundless. He had his caster attachment Boundless charge this other Clockatrice and have it charge into Veil. And I was like, you know what? I'm at defense 17. I've got multiple transfers. But then I was like, nope, I'm going to get paralyzed from the first shot, which means all the rest of the stuff is going to hit. And his dice just went on fire. And it was just like, he went 9 on 2 dice, 10 on 2 dice, 11 on 2 dice, 12 on 2 dice. And I was dead.
Ouch.
Again, it was one of those, like, he didn't roll below average on any of the damage rolls. So I didn't ever have a chance to, like, soak a smaller hit. And so Veil died pretty quickly, which was really too bad. Like, I think the problem with that game is I wanted to pressure his caster and then realized that I really couldn't. And so Veil probably should have been a little bit further back. Honestly, I think he probably only needed to be like an inch further back. But again, I was thinking I wanted to put pressure on him. And then I very quickly realized as his turn was going on, I'm like, I don't have an actual way to pressure him. Go Lab is going to get...
But man, I got assassinated by Moshar last week. So the assassination games come back in a big way.
Yeah, and as I said, my thought process was people were going to assassinate. So shifting my list to play things that would play better into assassination was the right call. But the first assassination I wasn't prepared enough for, and the second one, my games against clocks have been very limited, and so even though I was a little prepped for the matchup, like I said, it should have been Absaloni in that matchup, but even though he was going to have a lot of grievous wounds charging, I still thought I could potentially be okay, and like Proteus would just eat clocks alive. But I didn't feel good about it in that scenario. So then at this point, I've now had 2 very short games. And there's definitely a part of me that's like, I kind of wish that I played Saren. Going into the last round, I was talking with David again, and David had lost his first 2 games and then got a bye in the 3rd round. And he had kept asking, he's like, I want to make sure that we get a game this weekend. And I know I don't often play games outside of tournaments. That's just me. I prefer tournament games.
That. Yeah, me too.
So I went up to the organizer and I was like, hey man, I'm in the 1 and 2 bracket. There's this listener to the show who's also in the 1 and 2 bracket. We're not fighting for anything important. Like, our records do not matter. How would you feel about pairing us in the last round so I can make sure he gets a game against me? And AK was like, let me make sure, like, I got to double check and make sure it doesn't mess anything up. He's like, but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. So pairing goes up. David and I are now going to play each other. It's a Legion mirror. And at first I was like, hey man, like, is there any matchup you want to play? And he's playing Animag. And Bags won.
I love him already.
I know. And the more I was talking, I was like, man, he's truly like a prodigal son of Blight Makes Right. Because it was just this like concoction of like both of our outlooks kind of mixed into like one play style and list. Like it was such an interesting amalgamation. Um, and I was asking him if there was a matchup he wanted to play. And then he was like, I want to play Animag into Absalonia. And I'm like, that is
Of
so
course.
bad for me.
Of course he did.
I was like, dude, that matchup is so horrible for me. Like, you would, like, I don't think there's a way I don't get completely wrecked. But he's like, basically, he was like, I don't really play Fags much. Animag is the list that I play. And I was like, you're making Emmanuel
Yeah.
proud. And I'm like, well, um, why don't we do Animag and Veil 1? And as I'm like, realistically, if I see Animag in the pairing, I'm not going to play Absalonia. We're going to play the other thing.
And Animag's his Legion in that pair anyways.
Probably seems reasonable. So I'm like, okay, so you want to play
She's got the
Animag?
hit buff to hit, and she can feat for grievous wounds, and she can make hitting Legion Beast trivial and like take them out with like a single chosen or two. So,
Yeah, I mean, Animag in general is. I'm not sure how much Animag likes the Callus matchup. That could go pretty bad for Animag, but I think most other matchups she's probably fine with. And so he won the roll and wanted to go second. I'm like, I feel like I'm playing against Emmanuel's list, but he's playing like me. And I was really sad because there was 2 walls, one in each zone, just like an inch in. And so he chooses to go second and takes that side. So his Hellmouths have walls in front of them.
Yes, they do.
And so all of his beasts will be able to move up into the zone and not be able to get pulled by my Hellmouths. I'm like, you made the right choice because I absolutely would have chosen to go second and taken that side. And so again, it felt very much like playing against an amalgamation of our 2 play styles. But so it plays the way that you kind of expect. I try to move up really aggressively, but not give him any pulls. Staying just outside of the 10 inches of any tentacle. Don't kill any tentacles. Move up pretty aggressively. And then, he comes up as far as he can safely. I strike in with Veil, try to do good work, and then reposition with the feet and give him some like rot wings and tentacles and stuff to kill, but don't give him anything too significant. And as I recall, he's eaten up a lot of time trying to like deal with all of my angles of threat, like the slipstream, the leash, because I do have Golab in a pretty dangerous spot. And eventually how things go, he starts getting low on time. And I'm like, dude, don't clock. Whatever you do, don't clock. Your opponent could still make mistakes. I'm like, this side of the board over here is all jammed up. Like it's just chosen on chosen and like just let it be. You do not have enough time to resolve all of that stuff over there. And honestly, it's not like I have a shit ton of time. So that's probably just going to stay clogged up. Let's you make the key attacks and then end your turn.
Chosen on chosen is like old people fucking, man. Like they don't hit super hard once they're in melee, and they have the healing factor, so they're basically like, bop, I hit you for 3, I heal for 3, I hit you for 4, I heal for 3. And then if you got like armor buffs on either of them, forget about it.
Yeah. I forget the exact way that things wound down because he didn't end up clocking. And I can't remember if I was just like able to clear out the last things to like score the points if I win it on Animag. But I mean, he did not have enough time to finish resolving that game. I think I was like, well, let's just see if we can officially end it, and I'll just go in and like see if I can kill Animag now. But it was a fun game. I feel like I often don't get to play enough games against listeners, and so that was fun. And I was able to give him a lot of advice about like playing the list and like threatening with it. And
man, like you can give advice on Animag. Keep moving, keep moving.
The whole time we were joking around. I'm like, man, if I lose this game, Emmanuel will give me shit forever. There will be no end. But then I went out to dinner with David and Clay, and then another listener, Simon, joined us. And there was a point where we actually reshuffled the seats because I was sitting over by Clay, and it was really loud. Like there was a band going and stuff. And we were like, why don't we switch so the two Legion players have Charles in between them, and so they can actually like talk Legion tech. But we had some meta discussion as well too, not meta in the perspective of like building your local meta and like helping that stuff sort of go smoothly. But it was cool. Like obviously, ended up 2-2, was not in the cut, and I didn't expect it to be. Learned some key things, and it really going to go. I'm like, all right, I want to do a scramble tomorrow, and I'm gonna play Saren. Fuck it, I just want to like throw it into things and see what happens. So, but
I'm so excited you played Saren. Like when I came back to Legion, I was like, man, I really like Saren's feat, and you were like, yeah, it's not the time for there now. And then like Oblivion comes around, and then theme shift around. You look at Saren again, and you're like, nummy nums.
What was that?
Nummy nums.
Nummy nums. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Like she was one. I'm like, man, I kind of want her to get tweaked, but.
Sure,
When I started thinking about like what Sloan does and Crucible Guard, because I'd gotten a Crucible Guard game in like the weekend before, and I'm like, so I've been able to think about that matchup a little bit, and that's part of, that was one of the things I wanted my Saren list to cover. So I do a scramble, but I sleep in, I take a long shower, go get breakfast, and I'm like in the last scramble that starts.
You're probably in the zone too, knowing you. You got a shower and breakfast and slept in. You came in there looking like Goku. Yeah. He's like One Punch Man, like, you got the touch, you got the power. They're like, put this man in a scramble now.
Yeah, I walked over and there was no one else signed up though, so I was the first one going in. I'm like, well, maybe I get it, maybe I don't. So I was checking in like how Watt was doing and how Donnie was doing, and just then it didn't take long. We had 8 people. So the Saren list is Blightbringer, Golab, Harrier, and Amok, double Hellmouth, double Chosen, and then it gets interesting. Like the last points are a little flexible, but I ended up going with 1 Forsaken and a Hermit and 2 Spell Martyrs because I knew.
Oh yeah, Hermit.
I didn't know for sure how much I would like the Hermit in the list because it's not as mobile as say like Veil is. But I was like, you know what? There's cool things to like about it. I definitely wanted the 2 Spell Martyrs because I knew Breast Stealer was going to be a key spell for her, and it can be cast multiple times now. And then it gives you solos for zones. So I did I've got a mixture of things. I kept the Harrier in there so that I'd have something to go to control specific zones, that sort of thing. It gives her access to Elusive, which I thought could be very interesting. The first matchup I get is Infernals.
Wait. I think we need to talk about this list just a little bit more, though.
Okay, we can talk about whatever you want, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Yeah, because when I saw you post the list, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit of a blight boner. Like, so up until that moment, a bloner. Is that a thing?
I don't know.
It was very much of a Blight Makes Right moment in my pants.
Yeah.
So up until that moment, it hadn't occurred to me to put the Hermit in the Saren list. And I've been thinking about Saren still since we had talked about her a minute ago. Yeah. So the one thing she lacks is the damage buff, and putting in a solo that increases the survivability of something else and can go sit on a flag would just seem like the perfect storm. I remember because
the blight clouds open up and you're like, oh, God bless the Hermit.
So I was in public, right? And I'm sitting there. I think I was in the mall, and I'm looking at it. I have it in my hand, right? And I look at the list and I go, oh! That was my literal physical reaction to seeing it. I had to stop and pause for a second and go, this is a thing. This is the nerd boner central right here. I really, really like that list. So Go for it, man. Like, tell me about the run with it.
Okay, so I get Agathon first, um, and I'm pretty sure he won the roll to go first, and so he takes first. I take a good side for me that gives me a good spot for Golab and Saren, and um, what happens there is he doesn't. I mean, he can't move up far enough to really threaten me, and so I don't have to pop feet bottom of one. But I've got Banishing Ward on the Blightbringer, and still they're all on the aura, so they're pretty beefy. He's not able to do much in response. But there is still some stuff in threat range, and I've got Hellmouths. So what I end up doing is I go for a key Breath Stealer to make sure that my Hellmouth can pull in a heavy. And then I'm able to kill a heavy, put a lot of damage on another heavy. I think I thought I was going to kill a second one, but the dice were not with me in particular.
Yeah.
So, but I'm able to at least take a heavy, and I have feet up, and he's going into like, he's trying to thunder dunk me now. Like, he is not liking how the board looks, and because I go up like 2 control points to his 0, and he's just feeling like he's not gonna like. He doesn't feel like he can get something hard enough to the Blightbringer because he can't Curse of Shadows it, and so even if he gets something on the Blightbringer, it's not going to do very much damage. He doesn't want to like trade 3 heavies to kill like 3 or 4 chosen. So he's trying to like institute this whole like, I'm going to go in and murder Saren. And then all of a sudden he's like, all right, and the cultists walk up, give this guy essence, and these 4 heal him. I'm like, no, they don't. Golab's right there. You're right there. No, 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 no. He's like, fuck. So he spends like a whole bunch of time trying to still instigate a plan to get damage onto Saren. And long story short, it does not happen. And I think I score 1 more control point and he clocks, is basically what happens.
I really like that you used Breath Stealer that game. I think it's a great spell for the Primal Terrace list. Not only is the accuracy buff great for the Hellmouth, like you were using it, but sometimes being able to help you buy the alpha with, say, a unit or 2 of Chosen is huge. When you're just like, oh, this would normally be a great exchange for you, but the -2 speed, it's less great for you now.
Yes. Round 2, I look down and I have a troll player, and I'm playing against Ragnar, the battle box caster. So I look up Ragnar, and I'm like, we're basically playing the same list, but he's playing it in trolls and I'm playing it in Legion. His feat is you roll 1 less damage die against all of his shit.
Yep.
And he's got the Dunia Archons and a bunch of Rune Shapers and shit that heal and are high armor. So, and he's got the Mountain King. We are quite literally playing the same list.
Amazing list, by the way.
We're playing. Each of us have a Gargantuan and a bunch of shit that's high armor and heals. So that's going to be this game. This ends up being a massively grindy mush fest in the middle. At one point, after his feet's down, I put Golab and the Blightbringer into his Mountain King and don't even get it like halfway dead.
Yep, Viva la Mountain King.
But there was lots of interesting things that I started learning over the course of this particular game. This was the first time the Hermit walks up and catches something in telemetry so that I can Breath Stealer it to drag.
Cool.
And I'm like, oh, I like that. I start realizing some other synergy.
Magic 9 is real good.
Yeah. Especially when you're like, I only have 1 tentacle that gets to hit this thing. I would like it to be 2 lower defense.
Yes, please.
Then I have the turn where I'm like, oh, I will have the Hermit give the Mountain King -2 armor, and then the Chosen are going to move away from it afterwards. So I'm like, oh, I'm really liking this. And then there's a point where I'm throwing daggers, and I'm like, oh my god, her daggers are POW 10 because they're throwing weapons, and she has +2 strength in the aura. So suddenly now she's Rat 7 POW 10 Grievous Wounds, which is actually pretty reasonable.
It could have been PAL 12 if he had done the -2 armor aura.
Yeah, that was not a point where it was in the aura, but I still like Rat 7, POW 10, Grievous Wounds. She no longer has to buy more attacks. It's just rate of fire 3.
Nice. That's
So
pretty good. What's the
yeah,
range on it?
7.
It's not bad.
Yeah. It's still like there was points where I'm like, I just need to plink this thing because I just don't want it to heal. And in this game, gotta live the respawn dream where Mountain King like pops and kills Golab, and I'm like, bloop, respawn. And he has no other attacks on Golab, and so Golab just starts eating stuff and fills back up to like halfway.
Nice.
But this game ended up resolving, unlike anything. Well, it was a mushy fest in the middle, but basically he ends up clocking, and I have 3 control points. Or I think this game we lost track and eventually realized that we were going to turn 7, and I have 3 control points and he has none. And so I had like a minute or two, he had like a minute or two, and I'm like, neither of us have enough time to really get any more work done in this list, but I'm ahead on control points. So you have to clear something to score, and you don't really have enough time to do that.
Yeah.
Because Golab left and started eating things, and like Golab totally skewed that matchup because I was able to like stop things from healing and started ignoring tough and eating things.
So for anybody who is just now catching up or fast forwarded for whatever reason or just missed that last battle report, I'm going to recap it for you. It was Mushy Fest, Golab, 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 Mushy Fest, Golab, 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 Mountain King, Golab.
Oh, another fun thing. -2 armor aura, Forsaken Bomb, now is POW 10.
Woo!
And so like that's how I just like killed all of the whelps that were left from the Mountain King when I eventually killed him.
You're just like,
I was
what?
like, I'm like, fuck these whelps. I do not want to make attacks on all of them. Get them all out of my way.
Nice. That's a good way to burn off some time too, when you're like, I need to kill all these things, but I don't want to roll dice.
Damage rolls. Let's do this. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of interesting synergy. I did really end up liking having one Forsaken. I kept finding each game where basically there would be a turn after the feat where Golab and Blightbringer both need to do a bunch of work, but Sarah still needs to camp a couple. So usually the Forsaken's like, hey, Blightbringer. And then Forsaken's like, if the Blightbringer's around next turn, I'm going to go boss mode.
Nice. Yeah, that +2 strength and being able to buy more attacks, real good. Hey, and then it can have -2 armor because of the.
Well, or if you're in
honestly,
I was going to say if it's in the Withering Ash aura, then you get like the Forsaken can buy attacks and things and be ignoring tough in the aura and stuff and help clear off the Blightbringer.
Also good. That can be a surprisingly potent melee solo, and anytime you can give it a damage buff, it shines. And now you have 2 damage buffs essentially within the list because of the Blightbringer and the Hermit. So the Hermit and the Blightbringer were just like perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the Forsaken effectively, if you Breath Steal or something, then Hermit it and activate the Blightbringer, the fucking Forsaken can end up being like Mat 8 POW 16s, just like just like that. Awesome. That's the sound effect.
That is the sound for sure. You have to make that when you're playing too.
Yeah. So I don't actually get to like go to 5 control points in either of these, but I'm finding that players are just clocking into this list, like trying to find outs and dealing with the combination of Banishing Ward and high armor, and they're just staying relatively safe. People are like, what's her stats right now? Defense 18 against ranged, armor 19. What? Yeah, she gets the +3 from her feet. She's in the Blightbringer aura. I'm like, so the whole game, just like, she's almost always armor 16, which is a real good stat line. Like 16-16 base with +2 versus range, and she can Banishing Ward herself.
Solid. I was thinking about this too. We were talking about pairs for Animag at another time, and I was like, it's real interesting to be able to be like super armor skew and then super damage skew and just be like, which one do you feel like dealing with?
Yeah. So last round, I get Kraken, who is one of our locals, and I've played against them doing Crucible Guard before. So now it's the Washington off. Yes. There was a point during the LCQ where someone was like reading off the list and like, Kraken, is there actually someone with the name Kraken? And I'm like, instinctively, just my head, I just don't have inner dialogue. I'm like, yeah. And Kraken walked by at one point and they're like, by the way, I heard that and I appreciate you.
Oh.
So Kraken and I play and it's Sylvester versus Sarah. And I'm like, this is one of the matchups I want to test out. And we go into it and it ends up being kind of exactly what I was talking about. And you start doing the math and it's like, what are your battle engines at POW 14, maybe POW 16, gonna do to ARM 22 Chosen?
Good luck, fucker.
And so eventually we talk about it. I'm like, you've got to make a decision. Either you pop feet and see what you can do, or you hold feet, know that I'm going to go up on scenario, and then you figure out what to do from there. And in this case, I think they spent too long trying to figure out the plan. I think whatever your plan is, you can't take more than 60 seconds to figure it out. You pick one or the other, whether it's the right call or not, you pick it, and then you see how it goes. The problem was I think Kraken spent too much time trying to figure out which route, so didn't get enough time to see how the long game was going to play out. They ended up deciding not to feet, but took a long time, shot up a Chosen, but really didn't end up getting much work done. Hutchuck came in, and this was the key moment. This is one of the times where I was like, thank God for Hermit, because basically Hermit walks over, catches the Hutchuck in telemetry so that I can arc, a Rat 9 because it's an engaged Hutchuck with a tentacle. And so I was like, I need to hit this so that the tentacles can pull Hutchuck to the Hellmouth, because otherwise I don't clear this zone, because I don't have anything that can get all the way over there unless I can pull Hutchuck in. So even though I had 3 tentacles to swing on him, I wanted to make sure that I got it. And because that was going to be a key defining control point to put on pressure. And I was like, oh, thank you, Hermit. You made me feel a lot better about this. I mean, just taking it from like a boosted 9 to like a boosted 7, I was like, felt way better about that.
Every game so far, the Hermit has been clutch for you.
Yep, the Hermit has actually been really significant in this list. So I do get Hutchuck murdered, and I'm able to go up on scenario. And now, obviously, like I do have to take the feat, but things are engaged. Like I'm already starting to score points, and still there may not be the +3 armor, but all of the Chosen are still getting +2 armor. And so the Dragon's Breath rockets are just really bringing Chosen down to their normal armor, and it's still not great. I would say one of the mistakes I made is I thought it was important to keep my Chosen in the aura, and too many of my Chosen were too close together. So one of the Dragon's Breath rockets caught like 3 Chosen.
I've been there.
I was not happy about that, but that's just a reality. Kraken also did a really good job like towing Jax into the zone, because there was this spot where like I had my Blightbringer like a good chunk into the zone, but it was all kind of just on one side of a rectangular zone, and we dropped down the 10-inch template, and there was like this little tiny corner of the zone that was like a quarter of a penny basically, where the Toro could tow in and couldn't be charged by the Blightbringer. And like I hadn't actually checked, because I was pretty far forward. I wasn't like towing into the zone or anything, and I kind of thought the Blightbringer was covering the whole zone. But is what it is. And so I couldn't quite position to threaten those Jacks well enough, but I still had Chosen everywhere, so they weren't really getting to the Blightbringer, and they weren't really getting to Golab, and so I was going to have them to like keep clearing zones. And they got I think 5 Chosen off the board, but things started going downhill real quick because Golab moved over, started killing the Halberdiers, and was positioning so I could clear that zone and start scoring more. And again, Kraken ran out of time. And so all of my games, I think I ended with 3 control points. 3 control points to 0. But I will say the Hermit I thought was just kind of this like, well, this could be anything. It could be a second Forsaken. It could be a War Chief. Like the War Chief does go up to like arm 22 in that list. Um, and so there's some interesting things there. Um, I mean, Gudrun's still interesting. You could potentially put in Misspeaker to give magic weapons to something, or to give Isla Sight to Saren or Golab. But in general, I thought the Hermit was fantastic for that list. And Saren has always been great, but just as you said, not having a damage buff for key situations has been really significant for her. And it's hard to remove the Hermit.
Speaking of the Hermit, I'm curious, how much have you had to use its transfer ability? I found that awesome too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, almost every game I ended up using it. You know, someone takes a boosted shot like into Golab or the Blightbringer, I will often be like, nah, let's just not have that. Um,
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think it surprises people too that it's command range. Like, it's
yeah,
a surprising aura to be able to just shunt off an attack.
yeah,
It makes figuring out how you're going to move in on a bunch of hard targets very difficult because as a mid-off player, I use vision a lot, right? And so if you're just like, I have a ambient vision in this
yeah,
area that says that any of these targets that you move into, one of these attacks I'm going to absorb, makes committing, especially if you have like a eggs in one basket kind of scenario with jacks or battle engines, really difficult because knowing that just one of those really powerful key attacks is going to disappear can be really skewing on the math.
yeah. You definitely want to kind of keep it in mind for a situation where um, it doesn't save them a boost later on. So you kind of want to like absorb a charge attack that's
Hmm.
going to be boosted anyway, or like a specific gunshot where they've only got one. Um, but there's especially when people want to like clear out a chosen to try to get into something. Sometimes it's like, well, I'll eat just that thing. No, that chosen is
Yeah.
not taking that damage roll. And then it's like, huh. Well, now I have to figure out what can kill that chosen that doesn't then block my other charge lanes and such.
Hmm.
Um, and so like that becomes really interesting. You
One
can
of my
also like say you have a tentacle or something
hmm
that someone's trying to like trample through. You just be like, nope, no damage roll. Why don't you just stay right there in front of that spell martyr? Like
yeah,
you're
that's good.
like you they lose their entire charge and are now in this really terrible spot. Like you have to be real careful about that kind of stuff when there's a hermit around.
I think it's great to protect your hellmouths. Like just being able to have a transfer for your hellmouths is good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think also, um, like in a really high armor skewy list, the thing that he offers too, um, just being that like if your opponent is already going to make a certain number of attacks, and a certain number of them are probably going to miss, and some of them are going to roll low, and some of them are going to connect. Now that there's that extra layer, I think it takes Sarah over that tier. Um, I think it gives her a really good bump.
Yeah, it definitely skews because a lot of times if things spike on the Blightbringer, things can go bad. But when they're like, you've got a Blightbringer, it's arm 22, it's got banishing ward, so you can't debuff it, and there's a mad vision, suddenly the odds of them being able to spike high on the Blightbringer go way down.
Yeah. You know what's
Um,
really fun with Mad Visions too is to sit him and another solo on a flag and be like, okay, so here's the puzzle. You've got to hit him 5 times to kill him, but you're gonna have to kill this solo, which will probably also have a transfer to stop me from scoring. How are you gonna do it? Oh, and I'm gonna put some things in front of it that may also use the transfer just to keep you from getting to him.
Also, there can just be a spot in the game where you're like, one side of the table is starting to fall apart, and you're
Hmm.
like, Hermit runs. Whoop. And suddenly you're like, that will take you 5 attacks to clear that zone now.
I do
Which
like
can
that.
also be an issue, like, because the list already eats people's clock like crazy.
Hmm.
Um, so it's really interesting. I want to play this list more. Um, I've theory crafted a couple ways where I could tweak the list if I wanted to. Like, do I want to switch one unit of Chosen for like some other beast package? Like, but if I drop a Chosen, like I can put in a Carnivian, and I'm not sure that's as good, and I don't think I need the 2 points, so I don't think I want to do that. I was thinking about ways I could run like 2 Blightbringers and one unit of Chosen. But again, I don't actually think that's advantageous. I think the list kind of gives you the right mix. Like you pretty much start off in like Banishing Ward, either her, the Blightbringer, or one of the units. Put Respawn on GoLab, keep Saren safe, and like take table space. But being prepared for key breast dealers has definitely been significant. But overall, I like the list. Now, I've already kind of posted about it on the LOS Discord and on the BMR page. Been like, all right, what sort of things wreck this? Because like Animag's a good example, right? Like I don't think you could play if you see you're playing against Legion and Animag is one of the drops. You're playing your other list because Animag will wreck this list. Like you're gonna get thrashed on. So, but there's other things like that. And I think one of my next things is going to be like picking a list to go with this and then getting some more tournaments with it and seeing how I feel about it and seeing how the meta is going to evolve. Like, because there's going to be other people evolving to dealing with Sloan. So there might be other heavy armor lists come back to try to deal with that situation. But I don't know. I'm excited. There's a lot of different lists I want to talk about, and we're already over an hour for this episode. But like, I spent a couple hours dojoing lists with Tom Guan, which was crazy.
Love that guy.
So here, I'm gonna spoil something that happened kind of accidentally. I think it was Sunday night. I'm out to dinner with Jay, and we're all having hibachi. I've never had hibachi before. Anyway, totally awesome. It was great. But all of a sudden, Chuck is trying to convince me to go to Adepticon. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to Adepticon. And somehow we end up in this conversation. He's like, Chuck's trying to convince me that we should bring the All Legion team back. That, from TempleCon, which was me, Chuck, and Jake. And Jake's like, I'm not doing Adepticon. I can't afford it. I'm not going. And suddenly, like, Tom Guan's like, I'm in.
Nice.
And I was like, wait, what? Tom Guan's like, I'm in. I think at the time he was like, I want Thags 2 and twins. I was like,
what?
Done? And Chuck's like, I'm in. Well, let's do it. I'm like, okay. So I asked David, and I was like, David, you had to lose to the Legion team at one point. He got the Legion mirror. And I think David's in, but Jake is like, I'm out. Like, we're not going to have this. And then all of a sudden, and we're like, me and Chuck are like, so you're saying money is the problem? And he's like, yeah, he's like, it would be like $700. So I'm like, if we tell the community that there's going to be an all Legion team going for the ATC tournament at Adepticon, we could raise $700 for you, no problem. And finally, he's like, all right, if you guys end up raising money so that I can go to the ATC, I'm in. And so I'm at this point right now where I'm like, I don't know if I can get those days off or not. And I wasn't planning to go to Adepticon, but there is a possibility that there might be a crazy all Legion team for that fucking tournament. That's
shit,
10 different casters.
I'll go. I've been to Adepticon a couple times. I used to live in Chicago. It's a good tournament.
I said I would go to something that I haven't gone to, so could be Adepticon, but that's a rough time of year for the Pacific Northwest. We've got like Seattle Open. Usually there's Intermountain Cup around it. There's a bunch of stuff. The only reason I didn't go to you right away instead of David is because you've been wanting to play Menoth. And so unless things change, I don't think that you're going to want to be switching that time of year. I know you well enough to know that you're going to be loving your burninating people.
Yeah, it really depends on what drops for Menoth for Legion between now and then. I will probably play Menoth for LVO, but there's a good chance I'll play Legion middle of next year as things start to drop.
Lock and load. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll see. I haven't made any formal announcements about it outside of this podcast because I don't want to like start fundraising for Jake if I can't go.
Yeah,
Right?
for
Like if
sure.
I start promising like, hey, we're gonna do this thing. But it'd be super interesting. Like a team of 5 Legion players making 10 different lists, 10 casters, 10 different casters. What do we come up with? But I was like looking at some of the core math. I'm like, fucking Chuck Ellsworth will play anything. Like that dude can win with whatever the fuck. And like, generally speaking, the list that David wants to play is not what Jake and I want to play. Like, David's probably best 2 casters are Feona 2 and Thags 1. Right? So already right there, like, he's wanting different stuff than Tom. Most of the casters that Jake and I are looking at are not those 4 anyway.
Dude, you know I should go and play Animag. Like that, you will win just on that principle.
Oh, just because you're playing Animag.
Without
No,
a
that'll
doubt.
probably be the caster that none of us play. Like, Animag will be the one that's just, like, not even in the 10.
Well, and that'll be the reason you lose.
And then, of course, the Canadians were there. It's like, you do realize that we're coming down, so we're going to win again. So you're fighting for second place. Love the Canadians. Anyway, that's just out for the listeners. I'm not making any public announcements about that until I give a chance. Because I'm at the point where my boss is not taking requests for that time period just yet. It's going to happen like probably in the next week. So I got to find out if I'm going to be able to get it. Because I'm taking off time for a lot of cons. But anyway, that's Warfaire Weekend. It was awesome. I drank a lot. I thankfully only gained a pound or 2. I stayed off the scale for a day or 2 to like let my diet adjust. But
Dude, I stepped on a scale for the first time the other day.
you're ripped.
Shit. I've gained a lot of weight. I was like,
A lot of muscle?
Yes, I've never been this heavy in my life.
All right. Well, we should wrap things up. I did name the Saren list our outro phrase. So
Oh, yeah?
it's Saren 1. Lights out.
Lights out.